allowed to have a say-so about that? I think so. I think we really need to. And to say that it works, it doesn't work. Every neighborhood that has had to deal with administrative site plan approval is trying to get rid of it.
Thank you. Ms. Holland.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to the first question for the mayor about the gap between the neighborhoods and the development. It has been going on for a long time, and we need to get to a point where it is not just a constant issue each and every time a new development comes along. I was one of the founders of the Coalition of City Neighborhood Associations back in 1990, so I understand clearly and have for many, many years where the neighborhoods came from those days when there really was nothing. That we found out about things going on when there was a planning board meeting, and we've come a long, long way with that, and the neighborhoods have come to a point where they're very active and they're very involved. But we all have to work together, and the neighborhoods can't just oppose everything that comes along. And so we have to figure out a way that all of us can work through this so that every time there's not an issue, we're not butting heads and we're not fighting about it. And I think because I've got the background in the neighborhoods, and I've also got a business background. One of the jobs that I had early on was with land development when the Palmer Ranch was being developed. So I understand the process that it takes, and I understand that not every developer is a bad person or doesn't care about the community. So I think the community as a whole, we just need to get to a point where we're not always fighting with each other. We've got to figure out how to do it so it's beneficial for everybody and it can work for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Dorfman.
Thank you. I'm going to address part of Ms. Chapman's response to neighborhood under attack and part of my friend Kelvin's response towards growth. Today I had a very unfortunate experience. One of my supporters who had a sign in their yard received hate mail in their mailbox. And this hate mail basically accused me of wanting to rape Sarasota and run down the street, that I was the developer's baby. Now I can only assume that this hate mail came from one of these neighbors that seemed to be under attack. Well, one of these neighbors attacked one of my neighbors and one of my friends. If you want it, I'll give you a copy of it. I can only assume this hate mail is going out to anybody who's got a Dorfman sign in their front lawn. The ones that are left, mind you, because they're being stolen left and right. My approach to growth is put growth where it is both supportable and desired. For example, we have a North Trail that is desperately in need of growth. It is in need of investment. It is in need of business and commerce to clean out all of the problems we have there, the crime, the horrible motels, everything else. If we have growth there, we will push the bad elements out. That is the kind of growth that I advocate. We have a North Trail that can easily support rental housing. We need rental housing. Ringling students, USF students, young professionals have no place to live. But there's no rental housing. There's no rental housing to speak of in Sarasota. Very little of it, and most of it is substandard. Why can't we advocate the growth, the putting in rental housing on the North Trail? We'll kill a lot of birds with one stone. We'll broaden the tax base. We'll move the crime out. We'll get rid of all those horrible hotels. We'll provide jobs in North Sarasota where jobs are needed. That's the kind of growth I advocate, not the hate mail that says Richard Dorfman is going to rape Sarasota and then go down the trail. I am really sick of this.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you, Mr. Dorfman, to keep the microphone. We're going to go to a more traditional format now. I'm going to ask a question, and all six candidates will have the opportunity to ask the same question. The question is, the everyday downtown resident and the occasional visitor to downtown are more and more often confronted by persons who are without permanent residences. That is the definition of homeless under the federal HUD, person without a permanent residence. These confrontations are frequently intimidating to the resident and visitor. At the same time, there seems to be a reduction in strategies and ordinances to help keep the downtown clean and safe. Do you have any suggestions beyond more meetings and workshops to mitigate the impact that apparent dysfunctional and aggressive persons have on the downtown experience?
As a matter of fact, I do. And I want to make a distinction, and Peter, you know very well what the distinction is. We have a homeless problem that has to be treated in a certain way. My heart goes out to the homeless. We have to have a solution. But we have a vagrancy problem that is, you know, people choose to be vagrants. We didn't force them into vagrancy. I think one of the real problems we have is that our police force does not have the rules of engagement. The police force does not have the direction and actually the leadership. Hopefully with Bernadette DePino in here, they will get the leadership they so desperately need after 3 years of really sort of floundering. The police department has to have the rules of engagement. In order for them to have the rules of engagement, we have to update our ordinances that govern the way they treat these situations. Our ordinances, according to our city attorney, according to people in the ACLU, are grossly outdated. The police don't have the effective tools to deal with this situation. Once that is mitigated, once they have the type of ordinances they need, then they know exactly what they can do. Right now, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't if you're a police officer. If you try to enforce the law, you know, you're going to be subject to vilifications. If you say, I'm scared to do anything, so I'm going to do nothing, then people will complain to you because you did nothing. What I advocate, change the ordinance, give the police clear direction, and let's move on. This situation can be rectified, but we've got to update our city ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a situation that's troubling all of us. You have a portion of the homeless population who are dangerous to us and to other homeless people as well. And then you have some of the homeless population who truly want help and want an opportunity to get on their feet. And so it's a challenge to discern between the two. The other day I approached a homeless man who was asking for money at the corner of Fruitville in Washington. I asked him, what's going on with you? Are you looking for a job? Do you really want help? He said, yeah, I do want help. I just can't. I don't have a phone. Employer can't call me. I just made some mistakes. And then I had a homeless man approach me the other day at Fruitville, Orange and Fruitville, who was almost like a stick-up man, who almost demanded money. He just didn't have the gun. And so when me and my wife are downtown every Saturday, it's quite intimidating sometimes. Or on a Friday night, it's intimidating sometimes when I have my girls, when you're accosted by some homeless people. And I don't believe that the long-term solution is having the police deal with it. I believe the police ought to enforce the law no matter who's breaking it, whether you live in a cardboard box or a penthouse. But however, the city may have to consider some type of ordinance to protect, not from, and that's not a reflection on the whole homeless, but there is a portion that's dangerous. I did a teaching at the Salvation Army, I believe a couple of weeks ago, and one of the employees there said his life was threatened by, and again, it's just an element of that homeless population. And so until we can find a comprehensive plan, I know, Peter, we're all tired of meeting. We have meeting after meeting. But until we find a solution that is going to be compassionate, and I believe any solution has to help people get on their feet, those who want the help, we may have to consider that because there is a portion that may be dangerous to all of us, and that concerns me. And we may have to consider that until we find a solution. Thank you.
Ms. Atwell?
Yes, I think everybody has to take ownership of this. We all talk about the global issue of homelessness. We look at the philosophical and ideological aspects of it. Of course we do. The city is now looking at a kind of a boots on the ground solution to this by having case managers get jobs funded by the Community Foundation. When I talk about ownership, I mean we need to engage all stakeholders with this. I think it's very exciting that foundations are finally getting involved here. They're going to be eventually starting a transition fund where they will put 3 case managers who have the expertise. They're the rank and file of the mental health community. That's really, really important. Believe me, I know that. They will get on the street, meet whoever is willing to be part of that, to get them into a home situation, a mental health, a medical, whatever. Be their case manager. If it takes 1 or 2 or 3 at a time, that's good. But the city is doing this. Bernadette DePino, who I admire greatly, she's on board with this. We're ready to go with this, and I think that's going to beget and beget and beget, because already I've had a couple of private people call me and say, I want to give some money to this fund. Let's get going on this. This is what we need to do. This is a call to action. Even though we all know philosophically and ideologically we need to do something about it, we need the practical.
Ms. Holland?
I know firsthand how difficult this problem is, because when many of the homeless left 5 Points downtown, they came to Gillespie Park. And we had a real issue. We got to see exactly what everyone else had been experiencing. And one of the things that we found was that within the homeless population, there's so many components and there's so many elements, and one of them was a criminal element. And so we talked with the Sarasota Police Department. It was Chief DePino's like 3rd day on the job or something, and she spoke with our neighbors and had to address, at least initially, the problem from a law enforcement standpoint. And so that was a big help, and that's what sometimes has to be done. But we all know it's a much bigger problem. There are many solutions that are going to have to be engaged in to find the solutions to it. But I think where people feel intimidated and feel threatened, that we've got to use law enforcement as the key to taking care of that issue.
Thank you. Ms. Chapman?
Well, I believe in best practices, and best practices have a lot of elements to them. The first is that we need to train our public. Let's not feed these homeless people in our parks. It ruins our parks. It burdens our downtown. It burdens every park in which they're fed. They're well-meaning people. They need to be educated that this is not the way to deal with the problem. We need to educate our public not to feed, not to give money to people on the street corners. We need to close that market. I very much respect Chief DePino, and she believes this is not a police problem, and I do too. I believe that there are more fiscally responsible ways to handle this. And one of the things that Bradenton has done is a one-stop center. I'm very much in favor of a one-stop center. We could mobilize some of the people who have the sympathies to give the money to that. That is a less expensive option than using the police or jails. It is a way also to divert people who are homeless or vagrants from emergency rooms, and it tends to be a less expensive option. Let's do it, let's work on it, but it requires a regional effort, not just the city, but the county as well. In St. Pete, the sheriff was involved because he used it as a way to take people out of the jails.
Thank you. Mr. Tyson?
I don't talk about this particular aspect about homelessness very much. But the fact of the matter is that the development community bears a huge responsibility for the destruction of low-cost housing. I live in low-cost housing. I pay $191 a month, and it's about a quarter of my income, Social Security. So, if you are going to create low-cost housing that's $1,000 a month, that's not low-cost housing at all, particularly if you're knocking down houses like mine in order to do it. And guess what? A few years ago, they got a rezone on my house. I didn't ask for it, they did, developers, and they can build a project on my house whenever they want. Now, the downturn made the demand evaporate, so they haven't done it. But I'm sitting there waiting for it to happen. Where will I go? I don't know, maybe a nursing home. I'm 68.
Thank you. All right, the next question, and we'll start with Mr. Lumpkin. You can tell this is a downtown group. There's a lot of interest in sound regulation by the response on the cards, and I'm going to try to incorporate the questions that you asked along with the question that I already had prepared for the candidates. The first part of my question, I would like you to start with a yes or a no answer, and I also would like you to talk about any strategies that you may have for addressing sound regulations. But basically, the question is that there are concerns being expressed by merchants, property owners, and residents regarding changing the sound regulations as they apply to amplified music in outdoor venues, as provided in Chapter 20 of the Sarasota City Code. Is the yes or no? Do you believe change is needed? And if so, what changes do you intend to promote as a commissioner?
Yes, I do. I believe that change is needed. And here's my perspective and how we address it. First of all, I believe, I'm glad to see that the city is having conversations about it. And it's a tough one because you have the residents who obviously live in downtown who are vital to downtown's prosperity. We want to see a vibrant downtown, which I believe we're starting to see more. Having been here all my life, I remember, like some of you, when downtown was a ghost town. So it's encouraging to me to see Friday night people out and enjoying downtown. Of course, we want people to come more and more to downtown to enjoy themselves. And then we want to attract more business to downtown. We don't want just restaurants and clubs downtown, but we want retail as well. We want more Brooks Brothers. And so it's how do you balance that where everybody wins? Some people probably move to downtown because they do want the noise. And then some don't want the noise. And so first of all, I'm encouraged that we're having the conversation. And if I'm elected, then I have to join in that conversation to help us find a way that we all win so that downtown can prosper. Because I believe we need people coming in to shop and enjoy themselves for it to prosper. And we need people living here for downtown to prosper. I believe we need all of those things working together so that downtown can continue to thrive. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I believe that the city's prosperity really hinges on the answer that we come to. With this, even the sound ordinance is going to be a big part of our future prosperity. And so I'm just grateful that we're having the conversation, and I'm sure that conversation won't be over March 12th or even May 14th. And so I'll just join in to help us get to the place where we all can win.
Thank you. Mr. Dorfman.
Peter, are you specifically referring to the issue of amplified music, or are you referring to the issue of raising or whatever, raising or adding additional hours to
The Chapter 20 of the Sarasota City Code speaks to the restriction on decibel levels and hours as it applies to amplified music in an outdoor venue.
All right, I wanted to be clear. I'm a supporter of modification of the regulations. I would be in favor of extending by 1 hour each night, 10 to 11 during the week, 11 to 12 during the weekend, extending the hours where the music could be played. Under the caveat that the music would be subject to very, very strict monitoring, and that we also try to find ways to mitigate whatever sort of complaints that may stem from that. I was talking to a fellow who lives across from Marina Jackson. He said he was having a problem with the music. They went and they talked, and they said all they did was point their speakers downward instead of outward, and it mitigated the problem. So yes.
It's not mitigated.
Excuse me, no.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, no. I'm sorry. You can clarify after the.
So yes, I am in favor of extension. I'm in favor of monitoring. I'm in favor of coming up with the type of regulations that would apply to monitoring. I'm in favor of also looking at technical mitigation.
Ms. Holland?
Yes, I also believe that we need to continue the discussion. We need to see what the possibilities are, but we need to do it with respect for everyone's input and everyone's situation. But I think that perhaps some extension of the hours might be a possibility. again, I'm an open-minded person. I think discussion on these issues is always good, and we're not going to get the problem solved unless we do talk about it. And I'm glad to hear that the city's having the discussion, and I think everybody needs to participate, and everybody's voices should be heard.
Thank you. Ms. Atwell.
Downtown is extraordinary. 20 years ago, it wasn't like this. It is emerging as an amazing, vibrant, urban, diversified core from which all things emanate, as I always say. I do support looking into this, and by the way, before I continue, excuse me, this Monday night, we are going to have this on the agenda, the sound ordinance. Commissioner Caragiulo has put it on the agenda for Monday evening under new business. We will be talking about many, many aspects of this, everything that's been said so far, very technical mitigation strategies. They're going to look to the commission, how do you want to move forward? This will take a long time. We will have a lot of input, a lot of meetings. This is just beginning. But I believe that this downtown calls for this right now. We have emerging people, and that goes into people live, working, and playing downtown. A lot of people, young people, that we want to live downtown and afford to live downtown and work in those 23,000 businesses. Where are they going to live? Where are they going to play? And this has a lot to do with that. But that will work well with everybody else that lives here. That's what we have to do. But we're starting Monday night.
Thank you. Mr. Tyson.
I think I made myself clear, but now I'll put the exclamation point on it. I worked for a number of years as a doctor before I retired. I know, even if the developers and their hand-picked candidates don't know or don't care, that sleep deprivation is bad for you. It's medically bad for you. 10 o'clock curfew is fine. It's just fine. It already is a compromise. You don't need to look any further. And notice they're going to start talking about it next week. Well, they're going to string it out past the election, aren't they? You're darn right they are. Because they don't want to have to own this, but the people who gave them all their money, they're on the other side from you. Absolutely, you can depend on it.
Thank you. Ms. Chapman.
Well, in my neighborhood, we actually had an issue with regard to sound. And that was when that hospital power plant needed to be moved closer to my neighborhood. We dealt with this issue. And what we learned is that sound is a very complicated thing. And in order for sound not